Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the launch of Once Upon an Hour. Once Upon an Hour was released in 2020 and was the Fold's Picture Book of the Month and one of CBC's most anticipated fall children's books. What an absolute privilege and joy it is to be here with you all this evening, celebrating this truly remarkable book. My name is Tali Varon. I'm the founder and publisher at the Soapbox Press, and I'm so excited to be your host this evening. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Another Story Bookshop, an amazing independent bookstore in Toronto that focuses on literature with themes of social justice, equity, and diversity, who has graciously partnered with us for this event. If you still haven't purchased your copy of Once Upon an Hour, then I heartily encourage you to get your copy from Another Story Bookshop, and I'll share the link in the chat with you throughout the event. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that although we're gathering in a virtual space, the Soapbox Press rests on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We encourage you to learn the history of the land you are currently on as we reflect on the past and acknowledge the changes that can be made going forward in the process of truth and reconciliation. In a few short moments, we'll be welcoming NYK Choi to the stage to really get this launch party started. But before we do, let's take care of a bit of housekeeping. To ensure the most enjoyable experience for all of us here this evening, so again, in a few short moments, Anne is going to join us on stage, and then we'll launch into discussion about all things Once Upon an Hour. Now, be sure to pay very careful attention because throughout the event, we will have several opportunities for you to win some great prizes, but more on that later. When we reach the Q&A portion of this event, which will take place during roughly the last 15 minutes, we'll invite you to use the raise hand function if you'd like to ask Anne a question directly. Or you can also, so when you use the raise hand function, you'll be called on by me and then we'll unmute your mic so then you can speak to Anne directly. And of course, if you're more comfortable, you're also welcome to use the Q&A box to ask your question and then we will read it out. If you'd like to chat with other attendees or Anne or the other panelists that we have, use the chat box throughout the event. Just make sure if you're leaving a message that you'd like all attendees to see, that you use the to panelist and attendees button. Unfortunately, we had a technical issue with our closed captions right before the start of the event, so unfortunately they will not be available. We sincerely, sincerely apologize. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Anne. Originally from South Korea, NYK Choi immigrated to Canada in 1975. Her novel, K's Lucky Coin Variety, was a finalist for the Toronto Book Award. This story, set in the 1980s, was inspired by her experiences working in her family-run variety store. Once Upon an Hour, Anne's debut children's picture book, was released in October 2020. She is the co-founder of the Authors Book Club, an online initiative that connects readers with authors in Canada. She lives in Toronto. Now, I hope you'll all do the same in front of your screens. Let's all raise a hand for NYK Choi.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Tali. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I wasn't, initially, I wasn't going to do anything because again, with everything that's happening in the world right now. But at the same time, Tali, and I am so grateful to Tali, convinced me that we need to find moments to celebrate, and we need, and also too, this book isn't just about me, right? This book involves so many people, and the process was long, and just to acknowledge the people who are on this journey with me. I apologize. Initially, I did want this to be more interactive and for everyone to be able to see each other, but we were surprised and appreciative that so many people chose to join us tonight. The funny thing is my husband's running around trying to connect, and I think he just got on. So it's fascinating just the behind the scenes here. But I wanted to begin by thanking Tali and the Soapbox Press, and also to another storybook shop who is co-hosting this event tonight.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your kind words. And now, if you're up for it, I suggest we just get this show on the road and we launch into our discussion. What do you think?
Yes, that sounds awesome.
Amazing. Okay, so like I think many of us here today, would love to learn more about Once Upon an Hour and hear about what inspired this book. Can you tell us why you chose to tell this story?
Yes. So when my daughter was 3 years old, and I've been sharing this story, but when my daughter was 3 years old, we were at, there was a Chapters at the corner of Yonge and Steeles, and it was a big store, right? It was the flagship store at that time. And we were in the children's book section, and we were looking for books. And this woman asked my daughter, this white woman asked my daughter, what's your name? And at that point, she responded, Yuri, which is her Korean name. And the woman said, I guess you'll never see your name in any of these books. And she didn't say it unkindly. She said it quite matter-of-factly. But okay, it broke my heart. Okay, I think there's no other way of actually putting it. It did, especially in light of, as many of you may know, that in 1975, when my family and I immigrated to Canada and registered into a Toronto school board for the first time, we were given different names because it was actually official school board policy that you could not have a non-Canadian friendly name to register into the schools. So I ended up losing my name and I became Anne as a result. And all of those thoughts came back to me because here, decades later, I felt like my own child was her name was also being taken away. So so the idea for the story stayed with me, but I really didn't do much with that. And then my agent, oh my gosh, Jackie had the idea, why don't you write a children's story? And we played around with ideas. But eventually I landed on this story, and it took me, 17 years later. So my daughter is now 21 years old, but she finally has a picture book, right, with her name in it. And I think, while that's wonderful, I think really, truly seeing her name in a book goes beyond just having, her name appear in a book, because again, I think we're talking about the importance of seeing one's cultural and social identity represented in the world around us. I just, before I continue, I just wanted to give a big thanks to the illustrator, So-Young Kim, because truly I feel she brought the book alive, the story alive. And I really also need to thank Liz Kemp, who is the editor with Orca. The book, it was quite a journey to get the book published. And the fact that Liz believed in the book and had a vision for the book that went beyond telling this Asian story, because truly at this point, I don't want to be writing, niche, I want to be writing stories for readers in Canada. So I'm deeply appreciative of Liz, who picked up the book, and Orca Books, who published the book. And finally, I have to shout out my agent, Jackie Kaiser, is a remarkable woman. I'm going to get all emotional here, but she did not give up on the story. And so there were moments of heartache and heartbreak, but she was relentless. And the whole process took 2 years, right, from writing the book to getting it published. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone involved. I have to say, Tally, one of the biggest emotional moments I had recently was I walked in Indigo at Bay and Bloor. Yeah. They have a section dedicated to a children's picture book, and it says Canada needs, I forgot exactly what it was. It says kids need more Canada, right? And I saw my little book on the shelf with a character named Yuri and my full Korean name, which I'm only recently reclaiming back, it's been quite a remarkable journey. And so yeah, that was the inspiration behind the story.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Anne. And my mind is racing at a million miles a minute. I feel like just from that alone, we could go in so many different directions, but we won't yet because there's still so much more to come. But, well, you mentioned your daughter. So, I mean, maybe this is a great, great point that we can also have a little bit of fun and also introduce Claire to everyone and also engage with our audience a little bit.
Yes. My daughter has prepared a little interactive activity. So she will be posting and reading out a question. And again, if you, I think everyone can participate. It's like, can we put up the question?
Yeah, let's put up the question.
And Claire, are you there? So are you going?
Hello.
Hi, Claire.
Hi.
So we're asking everyone to please participate.
Yeah.
And do you want to share the question?
Yes, and I think it's up here, yeah?
Yeah.
So my mom's all-time favorite children's book is one, A Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, or The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle.
So while everyone takes their time to answer, I just want to say I'm very excited for the moment that someone will be asked this question who is now a child, and then they're going to say that their favorite story is Once Upon an Hour. And I have no doubt that will happen. Oh, okay. We're waiting on less than 20 votes. I mean, not votes, responses.
I'm actually intrigued to know what the...
Anne, are you able to see who has voted or where the responses are at, or is it just me who can see them?
I think it's just you, but I'm peeking to see who's here. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So I know I have a list of, and Tegan McCanny, happy belated birthday. Tegan is my niece. Her birthday was yesterday, so happy belated birthday.
Okay, we'll give it 20 more seconds. So if you haven't responded yet, make your best guess.
And I have to also just give a quick shout out to my girlfriend, Evie, I see is online. Evie is in Greece. She is in Athens. So I have no idea what time it is in Athens, but Evie, thank you so much for joining us.
I love that we have a very international and worldwide audience. That is incredible. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll. If you haven't voted, that is okay. You will answer in our next question unless you want to get your answer in while I'm talking. No, okay, that's fine. So are we ready to hear the responses? So Anne, 18 people in our audience, so 30% voted on A Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats being your favorite children's book. 44% said The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, and 26% said The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Can you tell us what your favorite children's book is?
So my all-time favorite children's book is actually A Snowy Day. And it was one of the very first books that I read when I came to Canada. And it was actually the very first time that I saw a Black character in a book. And I don't know why I really connected with so this is Canada. So it started forming my opinion around, there is diverse stories in Canada. This was in 1970s. I don't even know. It was a long, long time ago. The one thing that my parents did was, my parents, before we did the variety store, they worked in factories. And they took all sorts of miscellaneous jobs. Like they worked in factories all day, and then at night they would go clean offices. But the one thing they used to always do is, you remember the Scholastics book orders, Kelly? Did you? Okay, so my parents, we had no money, but my parents ordered every book in the Scholastics catalog. So when the books came, I actually got to take the box home because I had all the books in the box. I remember, like I used to, the clothes I wore, would be like hand-me-downs from my classmates that, you know, that were donated to the rummage sales. And they, you know, I would get picked on because I had their old clothes, but I really didn't care because I had brand new books, right? So, and certainly The Snowy Day was one of the first books I had.
Wow. Oh, thank you for sharing. Okay, and thank you everyone for answering. So now another question from me. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, the specifics of Once Upon an Hour itself. So of course we know that the book talks about telling time by the title alone, and it shows many readers a new way of looking at time. So why was sharing this perspective important to you, and why is it important in children's literature at large?
So Once Upon an Hour looks at a different way of telling time. And I think this is really important for me to convey to young readers that there are different ways of doing things. That once upon a time in ancient Korea, people used the sun, the moon, and the stars to tell time. And certainly my great-grandmother, who would take care of us when my mother worked in Korea, she was like the most remarkable storyteller. She would tell us these stories. She would look at the sun and tell us, you know, it's time to eat. I didn't realize until much, much later that she was actually illiterate and that she would tell us stories because she couldn't read. And yet she was one of the most intelligent women I knew, and one of the most thoughtful and just aware. So then I just realized that there's different ways of doing things. And again, I think as an educator, as a mother, as an author, one of the best ways that I, like in my small world, can promote and inspire a more inclusive and diverse place to live in is to share stories that are different, that may not be commonly told here in the books we have. I think the idea of giving opportunities to young people to, you know, the cliche, walk in another person's shoes and look at their other people's experiences is probably one of the best ways to develop empathy. And I think, again, empathy is so important because it cultivates awareness and an understanding of other people's strengths and needs. So again, especially during, you know, these uncertain times, I think it's incredibly important for us to be creating safe spaces for our young people. And I think by, again, telling stories that might not be familiar to a lot of people, it's just one way to talk about sometimes difficult topics, right? So that even if I'm able to use this book as a tool to talk about identity, to talk about racism, to talk about even cultural appropriation at this point, because I think this is an incredibly beautiful time. It's a chaotic time. Like, things are a mess everywhere. But my mom is the one who has always said, in chaos, find opportunity, which is a very popular saying now. So I think right now, it's a great time to seize opportunities to tell stories that are not necessarily widely known.
Absolutely, and I think it will resonate with so many children and students. And I mean, oh, maybe, I guess, kind of going on a little bit of a side note, but when I saw this image of the clock that reappears throughout the book, I just kept thinking about when I was in elementary school and we were all taught to tell time, you know, on those like little plastic clocks, and then like you would wind up the handles. And I mean, I don't know, just imagine, I guess, how much more tangible you can make a concept by teaching it in different ways rather than teaching everybody in the same way, where for some students it might not make any sense when you teach it the standard way, you know what I mean? And so I hope that your book kind of opens up many avenues to showing teachers and students and adults and everyone in between kind of the different stories that we can tell and share and also learn.
I think at this point, the other thing I really want to do is encourage, you know, diverse voices to be heard. And I actually did a workshop before this event, young writers. And, you know, it's been an incredible journey for me as a writer, as a teacher. You know, for the longest time, I actually, like, for the longest time, when I was a student, I was a very compliant student. I always saw my greatest strength was in silence, right? I thought the universe could throw whatever it wanted at me, and I would remain silent, and I would take it. And I really thought that was like my secret weapon. Meanwhile, you know, I was struggling with mental illness. I was struggling with my sense of self, my identity and whatnot. And I just, again, this whole idea of, one of the things that I shared with the students in the workshop today is until my late teens, all the stories I wrote, they were about white characters, right? It didn't even dawn on me that I could be writing about Korean characters or other characters. And again, I never even stopped to question why that was the case. And again, even in the classroom, like as a classroom teacher, in the very early stages of my career, I took tremendous pride in having a quiet classroom. I did everything I could to get my students to work hard. And like me, I value, you know, I appreciated the students who were like me in the classroom, compliant and hardworking. And it's not until many, many years of teaching and having my own students challenge me that I realized that the best classrooms are often the most chaotic. And it's always the students, like even Kay's Lucky Coin Variety. I wrote that story because a student in my class challenged me and called me a hypocrite, right, for not following my dreams and writing when I wanted to. And it was actually a student who said to me, why does Paul Sun-hyung Lee, who is the actor from he plays Appa on Kim's Convenience. Why does he use his full name? And why do you use just your initials, right? And again, it was a student that kind of forced me to pause and think and reflect. And that's why, you know, again, that's why the whole name made it. But again, it's having these conversations, right? It's having opportunities for voices that we all have voices. I used to think that, you know what, some of us are, you know, we don't have a voice and we need to, but I realized, no, it's not true. We all have a voice. It's a matter of where does the spotlight fall on the voices, right? So, or so that they can actually be heard. And again, for me right now, it's such a priority to be sharing diverse stories. Encouraging others to share different perspectives. I think more than ever, we really, really need to work on our level of empathy and compassion.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful. Thank you. And I'm just going to keep thanking you until we finish.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you.
You can expect that. Oh, okay. What? So much to think about. So again, on that note, I wonder if we can invite Claire back and ask us her next question.
Yay, Claire.
I have another poll. Okay, so my mom's favorite fairy tale is Sleeping Beauty, Hansel and Gretel, or The Ugly Duckling. Take your pick. One of them's the right answer.
Claire, you're great at this.
No, I am not.
Okay, this time I'm going to give everyone a minute. So you have 40 seconds left to get your answers in. Wow, everyone is amazing this time. Almost everyone has voted. Love it.
I'm curious.
I keep wanting to say there's no wrong answer, but there kind of is. But that's okay. Okay, 15 more seconds. Okay, 5 more seconds. All right, so we had 13% of our audience vote for Sleeping Beauty, 11% voted for Hansel and Gretel, and 76% voted for The Ugly Duckling.
Okay.
Wow. So what was the right answer?
It's The Ugly Duckling. It is The Ugly Duckling. It is a story that I only know in the Korean language. So when it was first read to me as a child, and when I read it myself as a child, I read it in Korean. That was before I knew English. So there's a huge sentimental value to it. I know that for me, the story is really about a character that is feeling marginalized and isolated, and it's not so much about the fact that the ugly duckling becomes a beautiful swan. It's not that at all. It's the fact that the ugly duckling was always the swan, right? And it's a matter of really because again, that's something, for the longest time I felt not right in my own skin, right? I felt ugly, but we're always the same, right? It's a matter of coming into our space and owning the space around us. But again, this goes back to whether or not we see our lived experiences, our realities reflected in the world around us. So yeah, so that's it.
Oh, that is so true. And everyone is doing great. I think everyone is getting to know you very, very well. Okay, so let's talk about the writing process. So you're also a novelist, and I know that you also write short fiction as well. Can you tell us what writing a children's book was like?
Okay, it was so hard.
I believe it.
And I think if Jackie's listening, and I know she is, she's probably like nodding her head. It was hard. The whole book is under 1,000 words, and yet it took a year to write. There was a lot of experimenting with the style, with form, with word choices. I also did research into the story to find out about the whole way of telling time using the Korean traditional method. I also learned many things along the road. So for example, the dragon, the Western dragon is fierce and it's mighty and it blows fire, whereas the Korean dragon does not. Right, the Korean dragon doesn't blow fire; it's associated with water. So it seems like a simple children's story, but it was actually quite complicated to write. And then there was the whole process of, once the story was written, I was concerned about who would actually illustrate the story, because the story is set in ancient Korea. There's a story within the story. So the outer story, the story that starts off, has a character named Yuri, but then there is a story within the story, and I really wanted to honor one of the students I'm working with who does not identify with any gender, a non-binary student. So I was also thinking I wanted a character that was not assigned a gender, that if it was a female reader, young child, they could relate to that, male or non-binary. So I really hoped that the illustrator could capture this in their illustrations, and also the subtle nuances that come with the Korean culture. And again, I am eternally grateful to Orca, because again, they knew this was important to me, and they connected me with a Toronto-based Korean-Canadian artist. And I was over the moon when I saw the illustrations, because again, people may not know that when you're writing a children's book, the writer does not choose the illustrator. It's actually the publisher that takes care of all of that. But I'm again really grateful to Orca for really hearing my concerns and bringing us together. And I'm really, really excited. Can I introduce our special guest?
Yes. I think that is the perfect segue. Yes, Anne, go ahead.
So I am absolutely thrilled that So-Young Kim, who illustrated the book, is able to join us, and she's going to walk us through the process she took in illustrating this book.
Yes.
Hello. Hello. Thank you for having me as part of the session. I'm really grateful to be part of it. And I have to say thank you, Anne, for writing such a beautiful story. So when I first saw the manuscript, as soon as I read it, I thought of my grandmother, because I remember my grandmother telling me the same story about the doraji, which is the flower that is being mentioned in the story, and how this character takes the journey through the mountain, and then as gets all these helps. So this was something that was connected with my childhood too. And I also experienced something very similar as moving from Korea when I was during in my teens and having to change my name into Michelle. So I was stuck with the English name with Michelle for a very long time until university. And then once I graduated university, I was like, okay, it's time for me to go back to use my Korean name. And that's ever since that has happened. But yes, thank you again. And I can't wait to share some of the illustration process that I have done for the book. Is there a specific question that I should first answer first, Tali?
Yeah, so I'm so excited for you to dive into your illustrations. But before you do that, I would love to ask both of you, what was it like working together? So, Anne, what was it like to have your work illustrated? And Soyeon, what was it like to illustrate Anne's work? And can you kind of speak to your relationship working together?
You know, initially I was anxious, right? Because again, the story is it's such a personal story to me. It was a story that, you know, again, it ties back to my daughter, ties back to my grandmother. But then again, when Orca said that Soyoung Kim would illustrate, and I had seen her work before, right? And so again, I was absolutely thrilled. And then when we were talking, and then she showed me her work, you know, it's really weird because as a writer, I think in words. So I didn't know what my character looked like until Soyoung created the character. It's kind of funny, right? To just think. So, and I remember when I saw the characters, I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly like, it's better than I imagined. So it's been an incredible partnership. This is truly our book, right? And I'm just, again, so thrilled that you're here with us tonight.
Thank you. And it goes for both ways, just like Anne has said. I mean, I have not many words to add on, but definitely it's the collaborative piece. Once the words are the ones that are inspiration for me, right? That's where I start from. And that's when I start, like, I read the whole story first, and then I go into deeper part of the story of what the author might have, what Anne might have thought about. And I did hear Anne's story too, and which is what like made me realize what's really important for this specific story, right? So I think that was very important as a part where I had to understand the intent and purpose of where Anne was coming from. And I'm just happy that I was able to meet the part, and I was very inspired to create pieces for the book itself.
Oh, that is amazing. I'm so glad that you two were able to work together to bring this book to life because, oh, so incredible. So, okay, I'm not going to keep us held up any longer. Soyeon, would you like to show us?
Sure, I can show you. Yeah. So the art process usually starts with like a rough sketch, and then once rough sketch has been approved, I actually start building dioramas, as you see in my background. They are built with the wooden frames, and then the fabric is stretched on the top and bottom so that I can hang things. So I would go into the woodworking shop and then build all these things out of the tree. So I got to learn how to use some woodworking tools like chop saw, table saw, and sanding machines. So I make all the frames together first, and then I bring all the frames back to my house where I have my art studio. And that's where I start creating. So my favorite art materials that I like to use is usually pen and ink and watercolor. And with the watercolor, sometimes I like to experiment and use different things, which I will show you very shortly. But I wanted to share some of the actual artwork that I have created for the book because I actually have them with me right now. So sometimes what I would do is I would build furniture. So one of the things from the book, because it deals with a story like about Yuri and the mom telling about the story about the mountain and the character, right? So I wanted to make some sort of a difference in the scene where the Yuri and the mom is in the 3-dimensional space with these furnitures, and also you can see the chairs here. And then whatever is inside of the story, where the mountain and the character and so on, it will be more flat piece like this. So that would be like a little monkeys. And then I would have sometimes some pieces get really, really small. So this one is little horse. I'm just putting a paper at the back so you can actually see it in person. But things I like to create with watercolor and paint, and then I would cut them out. And then once all the pieces are cut, I'm gonna actually just turn around and show you the box in person. Sorry, my face is gonna be really big. But I wanted to show you in person since you can't really see it in the same space. But you can see it's all layered piece, and you can see the mountains here. I've used the watercolor and salt effect, which creates a specific texture. And then you kind of see the strings here hanging around. So all the strings that I use is a fishing wire that I have used so that I can actually hang and put pieces together. There's little mousy friend with the character. And then here's another scene that I have created from the book. So actually, when you actually see the entire diorama, there is a secret to it, because there is one spread from the book and another spread from the book. So what I try to do is when I create a diorama, it works as a whole art piece and also work as by itself to create the illustration for the picture book.
That is incredible. And then what do you do with the dioramas when you're done? So do you just keep them?
I do have them in my storage. I actually have a storage that I rent out because I'm running out of the room. But what I had originally planned was finding a place to actually display them and exhibit them for exhibition so that people can see in person. And who knows, maybe in the future they'll find a new home.
Oh, they're so beautiful. I was just following along with the book as you were showing the dioramas, and oh my, like, it's like meeting a celebrity. You see the little stuff here, and then you see you holding it. That's incredible. You're so talented.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing.
Oh my God. Now I'm going to ask a question. So Soya, can you just tell us about the timeline? Like how long it,
That's a good question. And it's hard to say because it actually takes about, I think the whole process takes about a year, right? Like when you receive the manuscript, you have to make sure it's something that you can illustrate and you can create and it feels right to you. And then once the manuscript is done, the thumbnail sketch would go first. Thumbnail is literally like a stick figure and here and there lines with some words, which is like idea sketch and brainstorming in other words. And then goes along with the rough sketch. And then once the rough is approved, then it's the woodworking and then creating art and then the assembly. And also for this case, it's a photo. So we book a studio for a photo session. I think it took 2 full days to make sure that we get the right photos that we want. Because one of the cool things that you can play around with diorama is what you want to focus. So depth of the field, like, because there are so many layers that you can kind of focus on. And also what kind of angle that you want to go into, what kind of lighting that you want to show. So to make sure to tell a different time of the day. So really it takes long time. it's every section has its own timing group, but it's also the feedback goes back and forth between all the collaborators that we work together with, and then making sure that I receive the comments and be able to make the changes if need to. So about less than a year, I would say that would take, but the actual art making of the inside would probably take 2 or 3 months. Yes, I think that's probably the time that I would look at.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
I really
Thank
hope
you.
that we'll be able to see a physical exhibition one day. That
Oh
would
my gosh, I
be
would love.
Oh, yes. Okay, so I do want to be mindful of the time
Okay,
because
sure.
it's 7:43. So I think we should do another trivia question.
Okay.
And then, yes, and then we'll get to the Q&A very, very soon. So Claire,
There.
do you want to
Yes,
come back?
I am back. Hello again. Okay, so third question. What would my mom say is the toughest part of the writing process? So coming up with character names, finding time to write, or dealing with rejection. These are all part of the process.
Okay, everyone, this is going to be super fast this time. We're going to give it 20 more seconds. I love how fast everyone is. Soon everyone will get it down in 10 seconds for the next question. Okay, 5 more seconds, final answers. Okay, thank you everyone. So we had 11% said that the hardest thing is coming up with character names for you, and 59% said that it's finding the time to write, and 30% said that it's dealing with rejection.
Okay, the hardest part for me is coming up with character names. That is really hard.
Ooh, you tricked everyone.
It is like I'm so used to rejection at this point in my career. That's okay. Finding time to write, again, it's really interesting because once upon a time, I used to have a to-do list, and writing was always at the bottom, like right below exercise. But at this point in my life, I don't even put writing in there. It's almost like, if I don't put brushing my teeth on my to-do list, is something I just do. So the writing is now a part of my life. Finding character names is incredibly hard, especially if you know people. I don't want to pick a name where I might know somebody, but yes, picking names really hard. This book was easy. The child has no name, and the daughter has a name, but typically it's the names.
Oh, yeah, that is so cool. Yeah, I don't blame you. It is very hard to come up with names. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question before we turn things over to our Q&A because I think it is an especially important one. So Anne, you are an educator. Can you speak to why diversity in stories matters and why you feel and what you feel we can all do to support a more inclusive kids camp?
Right. And I think I spoke to this earlier about why we need to have young people's lived experiences reflected in their immediate world. I think we have been talking about it for a long, long time. So at this point, I think we really need to take measurable action. And this is actually a really exciting time, right, with the whole Black Lives Matter and people pushing and challenging what has always existed. So right now, I really urge parents, if you're going to the bookstores, look for books, again, that reflect or tell stories that might not necessarily be already told. I have to, again, give out a shout out to Another Story Books shop. Again, if you could order books from our independent booksellers, this is a difficult and challenging time for everyone. But again, as like speaking with Soyoung, and I've mentioned my editor and my agent, there's so many people involved in and putting together these books. So again, at this point, I really encourage parents, educators to really read diversely. And the other thing too is support writers who work and live in Canada. This has been a huge, huge thing for me. Is like, as an educator, I often wonder, why we spend so much time studying American lit or writers that are not Canadian, right? So again, I think we really need to do a better job. And at this point, again, we've been talking about, how we have to create more diversity, more inclusion in our classrooms, in our children's lives. I think at this point, we should really focus on taking action. And you know what? If you are in a public library, for example, and there's a book. You could always ask librarians to order books on your behalf. You can go into bookstores and ask for books. You know what? As a parent, I was quite dismayed that my daughter's high school English curriculum mirrored my own. And that was like, there's a 31-year gap between me and my daughter. But what she was reading and studying in high school was exactly what I had. In fact, I was able to help her with her homework because I hadn't studied them all. So I think, again, parents, challenge what your children are reading at home. Ask your kids, what are you reading? Challenge your teachers. And again, do what we can in our own sphere to bring change, to demand change, if I could actually go that far. But at this point, I think we're all primed to be advocates for change.
So everyone, we all have really, really important homework that we should all hold ourselves accountable to. So read more diversely, support independent bookstores and shop intelligently, and also support our Canadian writers and creatives. Super, super duper important. All right, so we're going to have a lightning round of questions. Are you ready? We're going to open it up to the Q&A. So from May Yu, are you able to read and write Korean, and do you foresee your book being published in Korean? Anne?
That's a great question. And I don't read Korean. I've always wanted to learn, and I've tried to learn. I have to make it more of a priority. The funny thing is, my daughter is an East Asian Studies major and is able to read Korean and knows Korean better than I do. So it's so funny. I've worked so hard to try to preserve the Korean heritage in her. And, but no, I don't, but I will make it a priority moving forward.
Oh, wonderful. And maybe Claire will translate the book. Sorry, Claire. Just giving everyone homework. Okay, I'm done.
It's all good.
Oh, so Fiona asks, was The Ugly Duckling a translation, or is there a Korean variation, as many tales are universal?
The version I read, I think it was the original Hans Christian Andersen version translated into Korean.
Okay. Chris asks, what is the target age group for the book?
It is 3 to 5, but at the same time, it's a story, again, about a different way of keeping time. So I'm hoping that it will reach and that people will pick up the book beyond that little age group. It is, like, seriously so beautifully illustrated. Like, it's even to pick it up to look at the pictures. I really hope and again, if you are interested in the book, if you could kindly think about ordering from another storybook shop, we would very, very, very much appreciate that.
Yes, and on the subject of the target age group, so I'm a little bit beyond the ages of 3 to 5, but I bought the book and I read it, and perhaps I'm too emotional, maybe it's the pandemic, but I cried by the time I got to the end. It's so beautiful, so, so beautiful. So 3 to 5, it's really a suggestion. It is definitely not a hard and fast rule. You will not regret buying this book. A question from Rosanna. What lesson do you hope children learn from your book?
I really hope that it will engage children in conversation, or encourage parents to have conversations with their children. I really do want, one, just that there is a name in the book that is not typically seen in Canadian stories. And the other thing is, I really want them to realize that there are different ways of doing things, right? Like, even the whole idea of telling time. And again, it's not just the Korean ancient way of telling time, but with the whole, many cultures, the indigenous culture. Many indigenous groups use the sun, the star, the moons to tell time. But I just hope it opens up conversations that there are different ways of doing things than the standard, what we might learn in school.
Yes. Okay, a question from Michelle. Hi, Anne. How do you motivate yourself throughout the long writing process? I realize that it's a process that takes years sometimes, and I wonder how you keep yourself going.
That's a great question. For me at this point, it's interesting. Something really strange happened. I think when I hit like 50, I went from turning to role models to trying to be a role model. And again, I think having an adult daughter, working as a school teacher, but again, I am constantly, as my student has reminded me, telling young people to really pursue your interests and do what you want to do. And so I really, at this point in my life, have to practice what I preach. And also at this point, I really am committed to doing my part in promoting diverse stories. I think the way I would tell a story versus somebody else is different because of my experiences of growing up here, being a former ESL student, all of that. So I am very aware that the stories that I want to tell, only I can tell them, right? Just like that applies to every writer. And so I'm motivated to tell stories because I really, at this point, I feel very blessed to have a platform and to have this voice that can be heard. And I'm really, really hoping that that will inspire other people to do the same.
Oh, I love that you said that you stopped looking for role models and then you started looking at yourself as a role model. And Martin echoed my thoughts exactly in the chat and said, you are a real life role model.
Oh,
So you are.
oh, thank you. And can I just thank, I think there's a few people visiting from Northern Ireland here, and I can't imagine what time it is. So thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, we have a bunch of questions, but we are going to try to get through them very, very quickly. So Anne asks, can you please share Soyeon Kim's Twitter handle? Soyeon, are you on Twitter?
I'm actually not on Twitter, but I'm on Instagram. So my Instagram would be @Soyeonis. So Soyeon is my name, SOYEONIS. Yeah, I tried the social media as best as I can, and Instagram is the only one that I can keep up with.
Perfect. I'm going to leave that in the for everyone.
Thank you.
Excellent. Let's see. Brian asks, is there an opportunity for young children's literature to become a teaching tool at other levels of education, secondary, for example? And Brian is a former education colleague.
Sorry, is using like children's book at beyond the high school, beyond the elementary. It's interesting. I just did a workshop for grade 12 social science class where they were given an assignment of writing a children's picture book. So again, I think the children's picture book is a very, very versatile tool because at the heart of it is a key message. And because the language is simple and the text is short, but all the components of storytelling, the setting, character motivation, tension, all of that is still there. So again, I think it's one of the most versatile and sometimes underused way of communicating and sharing stories. So yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to make the next two answers really, really short because we have to, because I want to make sure we answer everything. So Rena asks, can you please detail how you chalk out time to write while holding a full-time job?
Okay, so very quickly, I don't watch TV. I actually schedule it, and so like I will start writing and I'll write from 9 to 11, for example, and I don't write every day. I think it's unrealistic. I would never put that pressure on myself, so I might write every other day, and again, depending on deadlines, I don't want writing to ever become a burden, right? It is a job, but it's a job that I don't necessarily even enjoy the process of writing, but I do love the written word. So again, it's all about prioritizing. It really, truly, truly is. My husband loves TV, and he'll sit there and watch. While he's watching TV, I can write, and it makes life work for us.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good, as long as it works. And you're very, very disciplined to not watch TV. I admire that. Because I watch far too much of it. Okay, Saad asks, is there a Western children's story that you wish could be rewritten in a Korean context?
Ooh, is there a Western story that I'd have to actually really think about that. Wow, Saw, thank you. That's a deep question. I might write about that. I'm gonna have to hold on that. That's
Yeah, that is a great question. And just in time. So we did get a few requests from a number of the members in our audience requesting that you do a reading for us. But unfortunately, I think we're out of time. However, I believe you're doing an event with the Authors Book Club that Fiona mentioned in the chat. So Fiona, if you would like to send a link to that event, if you have a link, and drop it in the chat for everyone so they can check it out. And perhaps, Anne, will you be doing a reading there? I don't want to be intruding.
yes.
Yes, you will be doing a reading. Okay, so everyone here, if you want to hear Anne read, you should definitely check out the event that the Authors Book Club will be putting on, and you should check out the Authors Book Club in general because they are phenomenal and they host events every single month. Oh, sorry. Okay, the event page is not ready yet, but follow the Authors Book Club on Twitter. So Fiona, if you want to drop the handle in the chat, everybody should go and follow on Twitter. So we will do that. Okay, wow, what an evening. I feel so energized and inspired. Truly, truly remarkable. I just want to say on behalf of all of us here today.
Oh, sorry, the giveaways. The giveaway.
My goodness.
Okay. And before we do the giveaways, I just want to give a quick shout out because I noticed my grade 3 teacher is in the audience, and I dedicated the book to my grade 3 teacher because I was learning English and I hated the English language because to me it didn't make any sense. But it was my grade 3 teacher who at the end of the school year gave me her home address and told me to write to her so I could keep practicing my English over the summer. And that was in 1977. And we still write to each other today. So I needed to dedicate this book to her because she's been such a huge inspiration to me. So I just wanted to shout that out.
Oh my God, thank you, Anne. Okay, so everyone, just full disclaimer, we're not going to finish at 8 p.m. We're going to go a few minutes over. We would love for you to stick around because 3 lucky winners in our audience are going to win some amazing prizes. It is going to be a random draw. So Anne is right now showing the prizes that we have available for our giveaway. Okay, Anne, I need you to pick a number between 1 and 60.
7, 11, and 21.
Okay, BK, you are one of our winners. Please send an email to contact@thesoapboxwrites.com and we will coordinate getting your prize to you. You said 7, 11.
And 21, I think.
Okay, Chris Corcoran, you are also one of our winners. So please, again, send an email to us. And 21, Lynn, you are our 3rd winner. So please send an email again to us. Nothing changes amongst the winners. The 3 of you, please, please, please send us an email and we will get your prize to you. Congratulations. Thank you all so much for participating in tonight's event. And now I will go back to my closing remarks. So again, on behalf of all of us here today, thank you so much to NYK Choi for writing this incredible book and doing her part to get it out into the world, and for allowing the Soapbox to host the launch this evening. And thank you so much to Soyeon Kim for being here this evening, for sharing your remarkable talent with us by showing us a peek behind the scenes, but also for illustrating this incredible book. It is such a gift to be able to gather with you all this evening and to celebrate such an important book. And on a very personal note, to also do it with one of my absolutely favorite people. I encourage you to head over to Another Story Bookshop's website or in person if you're able and pick up your copy of Once Upon an Hour. Lastly, thank you to everyone that joined us this evening. It was such a pleasure to have you with us. It was incredible to see that this event was sold out, and I think very, very rightfully so. If you enjoyed tonight's event, then you might also enjoy some events that the Soapbox is putting on later this month. So next week, we have an event coming up on Thursday, November 5th from 7 to 8 p.m. where authors Cindy Aronson and Tamara Herman will be talking about writing romance. The conversation will also be followed by a Q&A. And if you love poetry, spoken word, and creative writing as a whole, then join us next Friday, November 6th at our monthly TSB First Fridays open mic. But most importantly, keep your attention on this incredible, incredible book. Get your copy. And please keep in touch. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you very soon. And do you have any last words before we close out?
Just a huge thanks to you, Telly. And Soyeon, thank you so much for joining us. And to everyone who joined us tonight, I am eternally grateful for all your support. Thank you again.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.